What you're looking at here is the very last piece from that branch that had broken off the Manitoba maple tree that was in my neighbor's yard. And what I'm hoping to do here is just cut these up into as many log cookies as I can, and hopefully I'll be able to turn them into very simple, inexpensive little clocks. It was too bad that the bark wasn't intact all the way around, so I had to peel the rest of it off. The bark peeled off so easily that looking back now I realized that it was probably best to peel it off now rather than have it fall off when it was hanging up on somebody's wall. This is the first time that I've used pentacryl to prevent wood from cracking as it dries. Be interesting to see how it works here. I had cut 9 log cookies, and so I soaked 8 of them in this pentacryl. It didn't have any kind of a strong odor or anything. Kind of reminded me of a hospital smell, actually. The reason I didn't soak the 9th log cookie in the pentacryl is because I wanted to have a comparison to see, just how good this stuff really was. When I started, I had used 3 32-ounce bottles of pentacryl on these 8 log cookies. And when I was finished, and after carefully draining as much as I could, I was able to salvage almost 2 full bottles. So you may as well say it used up 32 ounces. The 8 cookies soaked up about 32 ounces. I did notice that they were a little bit heavier when I was handling them. Okay, now that these log cookies have been treated with that wood stabilizer, I wanted to get them dried out as quick as I could. So I was laying them on the dashboard of the car on a hot day and laying them on the air conditioner in the backyard. And in case you're wondering what happened to that 9th one that was not treated with the pentacryl, well, this is what happened. All the rest were perfect. I think my main hobby that I've had for the last 30-40 years is probably making clocks and fixing clocks. But anyway, we're going to make a clock here out of this Manitoba maple. These log cookies are a little bit too small to just pass through the drum sander without making a carrier to help support them and keep them straight as they're passing under the rollers. So I'm making a sled here to help carry these cookies through, and they won't flip up as they're passing under the rollers. And these rails that are going to be on the sides, what's going to happen there is any snipe that's going to occur is going to happen on the rails, not on the cookie. This heavy-duty double drum sander that I got from Canadian Woodworker is sure good. And in case anybody out there is interested, it's a General Model 15250. This sled worked really well. The pieces are nice and even all the way around. I had ordered these little battery movements, a couple of months ago, I guess, from Craft Time Clockery in Ontario. And they received the order on Monday, and on the Thursday, just 3 days later, they were at my door. Now that is good service. And here I'm just making a large hole that I can recess those battery movements into, and that way the log cookie will sit flat up against the wall when it's hanging up. It'll look a lot nicer, it won't be sticking out. I noticed that after I had passed these pieces through the drum sander, there was very faint but yet noticeable horizontal lines that the sander had created. So the idea here is that if I hold these pieces very lightly against this belt sander and keep the piece rotating as I'm doing it, I should be able to remove those horizontal lines. And this will help so that I don't have to use the palm sander all day trying to bring it down to the point where I can put the varnish on. I could be wrong here, but I think it's because these pieces were soaked in that pentacryl. And this pentacryl probably left sort of a residue, something like a glue. And both the belt sander and the drum sander, the sandpaper loaded up pretty fast. But as you can see here, this belt dressing eraser, I don't know what it's called, does a wonderful job at removing that. So I can't complain, I guess. That belt cleaner eraser works really well on an orbital sander as well. Just watch it remove all that buildup on that sandpaper. All 8 pieces now are sanded down as good as I can get them. And I'm thinking I'm going to have to put on about 4 coats of varnish on the face of each one. If I'm lucky, maybe only 3. We'll see how it goes here. If you look quickly, you can see the tree in the background that the broken branch came from. And I guess I must be in a bit of a hurry here. I'm sort of force drying these in the sun. Probably not a good idea. Just a light sanding here in between each coat. I've given these log cookies 4 coats of varnish now. Now this is the final sanding, and we'll just get them all cleaned up for the last coat of varnish. And this is the very last one. And it's a good thing too, because my spray can is starting to feel kinda empty. Well, as you can see, these little clocks are going to have a nice glossy finish. Now, because these little clocks are going to be hanging on somebody's wall, they are obviously going to look better one way up than the other. Now, what I'm doing here is just trying to determine which way is the best up. On some of these pieces, it seemed like 2 or 3 different ways looked good. And I had to be careful here because once the hole is drilled, that's it. I really like the way I can tilt the head on this radial arm drill press. Now I know on most drill presses you can sort of achieve the same effect by tilting the table. The only problem with that is your work keeps sliding off onto the floor. This way it's nice and stable. A lot better. Okay, that's piece number 8 drilled out. Well, we're getting pretty close to the end here. Just have to mount a movement in one of these little wooden clocks and we'll see how it looks. And it looks pretty good. These numbers also came from Craft Time Clockery. Be interesting to see how it goes here. I've never used them before. So because these log cookies were a little bit lopsided, I knew that there would possibly be a problem with them hanging straight after I got the numbers stuck on. So what I did was I rigged up a plumb line. You can see that white string hanging down from the ceiling. And after I got the log cookie on the wall and made sure that it was about as centered as it was going to get, then I just matched up the dial with the string. And as you can see there, the numbers dial is perfectly straight. I'm sure you've heard the well-known phrase, batteries not included. Well, in this case, they were included. And I'm just testing them out here. Every battery was right up. You probably noticed that I've used time-lapse photography a lot in this video to help speed things up. Well, as I said in one of my other videos, it helps make a long, tedious video a short, tedious video. This Manitoba Maple turned out to be a lot darker than I thought it was going to be after it was varnished. And what I should have done when I ordered from Craft Time was to have ordered the gold-colored hands, not the black ones. Well, next time. I noticed that the adhesive on the back of these numbers was slowly letting go. Must have had some sort of chemical reaction with the varathane that I'd put on the cookie clocks. I knew that if I didn't fasten these numbers down securely to the face of the clock, they were going to accidentally get broken off. So I decided to use very small nails that I had to fasten these down. I figured at any kind of a distance you're not going to be able to see them. However, I knew that if I forced them through this plastic without drilling a hole first, the plastic was going to crack. Now just press these nails home and my problem's solved. Now all I have to do is 7 more clocks like this. All 8 of them are now assembled and hanging up on the wall, and we'll just let them run for 24 hours here and make sure they're going to work okay. My experience has been if they run for 24 hours, they'll run for 24 years. You may be asking yourself, what's he going to do with those 8 clocks? Well, 7 of them I'm going to donate to the local thrift store here, and in order to do that, I pretty much have to put them in boxes. Now these boxes don't have to be pretty. They just have to be designed in such a way so when people are handling them in the thrift store, they're not going to bend the hands on the clocks. So I'm just going to use a bunch of scrap lumber that I've got around here. So what I'm doing here is I'm just cutting up the sides for those boxes. I'm going to have 14 pieces that are 7.5 inches long and 14 pieces that are 9 inches long. I know that I have a tendency to overbuild. Now the corners don't have to be glued here, but it makes me feel better. Okay, all 7 boxes are assembled now, and here they've sat and dried overnight. And now I'm just going to make the bottom for each box. I'm changing to my melamine blade here. I find it also does a pretty good splinter-free job on plywood. And it should do a pretty good job on plexiglass. You'll see in a minute. I wanted to save as much of the plywood as I could here. Never know what I'll need it for. So that's why I'm cutting this little jog in it. Because these little boxes are almost perfectly square, it's going to make it a lot easier to cut out the bottoms. Ah, perfect fit. One of the guys that volunteers his time at the thrift store, he knew I was making these little boxes, and he had a piece of plexiglass, and he thought possibly I could use them for the see-through window. Thanks, Ken. You know, I think this must have been meant to be, because when I put these little boxes up against the piece of broken plexiglass, they exactly fit. Well, here we go with the glue again. I guess I just can't help myself. As I said earlier, this doesn't have to look pretty, so I'm just going to staple the bottoms on. And this melamine blade did a really nice job on this plexiglass. Okay, we'll just take all the rough edges off of these boxes here now. I don't want anybody in the thrift store to get slivers. And some holes here for mounting the plexiglass. And here we are, and I think if people are reasonably careful, these things should survive. In case you're interested, that ninth log cookie that was not treated with that pentacryl wood stabilizer, well, it's hanging up in my workshop. I kinda like it.